This is Avowed. We're here on Xbox Series S. Be sure to like the videos. Subscribing is great as well. So I finally got this working. I don't know what the Series S's problem is, but every time I go to play a game on it now, it tries to reinstall the entire game. It's weird. I used to be able to just literally swap out my, little NVMe drive from the Seagate one and from the Series X, put on the Series S and just play a game. Now it's just tries to reinstall the whole thing. So sorry about the delay, but we're finally diving in and taking a look at what this game has to offer here on the Series S. And while visually it's decently impressive from a performance standpoint, it's not necessarily ideal, but it works well enough, I would say, in order to enjoy the experience of this role-playing game from Obsidian. So, obviously they've created a number of classic RPG games. This one is most in line with, well, basically the Outer Worlds, the technology, the gameplay style, how all the areas and zones are set up. If you've played the Outer Worlds, this will feel very familiar to you. It's just a little bit shallower in terms of role-playing depth, and a little more focused on, say, melee combat, because it is a fantasy game set within the universe of the Pillars of Eternity, which is a pretty expansive and lore-driven kind of universe, so it is kind of cool that basically this is taking cues and a setup from that world and just sort of diving into it in a fun and exciting kind of way, gameplay-wise. It's certainly an enjoyable experience. It's something that's decently well done. It just, again, I do wish that the role-playing mechanics had more depth to them. You know, kind of lacking in, I say as an example, romance, but also charisma, persuasion checks, stuff like that don't really exist in this game. It's kind of like the Outer Worlds, but toned down. You also don't control as much of what your NPCs are kind of geared up and everything, and it feels a little bit more limited in scope, and I hope you kind of get the vibe of what I'm saying there. So let's dive into the technical aspect of the game. So the Series S, quite a bit lower in terms of the performance quality that we're getting here. So this is the quality mode. So this is 1080p, quote unquote, so a lot of this stuff is going to be temporal because it's Unreal Engine 5, and that's why you got the UE5 rocks. The they look good, but definitely the UE5 aesthetic Unreal Engine 5, which kind of makes all the games look a little bit the same. So this is 1080p, 30 FPS. It's like VRR frame rate unlocked. We've got ray tracing elements included. That'll be your lighting. I guess to some degree reflections too. And then, that's kind of what the vibe is here. So if you do want to change the aesthetic to, say, balanced, you do have to apply the changes, and then the game will restart. Hopefully. Yeah. Maybe? Oh, there we go. I was a little worried for a sec there. I was kind of like, what's it doing? Okay, so we're going to balanced mode. So balanced mode exists for those that are with 120 hertz displays. So 120 FPS TVs or screens and or higher. So this is going to be just a second of loading here. This is another 1080p. It's just at 40 FPS, again with the optional frame rate unlock, and this one, again, ray tracing elements, but from what I understand, they're kind of toned back, and it's either minimal or missing reflection elements, so there you go. Getting the magic of Lumen. Whoa! I know, that's just a UE5 kind of thing. Anyway, so these are your two options in terms of playing the game. I would say that I would recommend, if you can, to play with the balanced mode. So you get, more of an evened out frame rate. That being said, you got VRR. You kind of have the full suite of, technical capabilities with the quality mode, especially if it goes, you know, kind of above the 30 FPS. I don't know. I would probably say balance mode should be your go-to in this one, in terms of having something that feels a little bit better. Like, obviously, the Series S, you know, is doing the best it can at this point in the generation. So, like, the game still looks, again, for, like, 1080p, the game looks pretty good. For Series S, it's not bad, but, you know, it is a bit of a toned-down setup and aesthetic from the Series X, for sure, which is expected, obviously. Yeah, definitely expected, but you get the full sense of scale. It's pretty detailed. It looks okay for a Series S. You know, it's what you should expect from the console at this point. Your FOV option, the game also has the choice to do third person among other camera aesthetics. So you can play the game in third person if you'd like to. It's a bit weird, honestly. This really does feel like a first person game, but hey, they give you the option. It's kind of weird that it's not hotkeyed as like a quick swap option, if that makes sense. Like, usually I'm used to being able to, like, switch between things. I also noticed that when you're in the third-person mode, the temporal, like, fuzz and stuff like that is a little bit more noticeable, for sure. So just, you know, keep that in mind if you are doing third-person. It's just, like, it is a game that, in my opinion, lends itself really well to basically the first-person perspective, but you can adjust things. I'd also bop up the save frequency. I noticed some frequent crashes in this game. Series S honestly doesn't seem to crash as much as Series X does, if not maybe at all. So you should be fine. I think it's just, yeah, I don't know. But I didn't really notice too many Series S crashes, and kind of looking around and giving this a whirl. And yeah, again, sorry I wasn't able to check this out earlier. When the game keeps reinstalling itself and it's 60 gigs, my internet connection just doesn't have it in it to keep reinstalling fast enough to do a video, and by the time I get to do it, it's like, oh. So I had to, like, really go out of my way to kind of get this working for the video, which is kind of annoying. It's also a little bit harder to showcase you this game because it doesn't have, like, the New Game Plus and stuff. So, like, there's a point of no return, basically, and I had to use that as my starting point in order to go back and do this type of video. I had to, like, literally go back to that point of no return, and that was kind of annoying since I lost some cool features. But, like, the game actually has pretty fun combat and cool movement. I love how you sort of move through the world and climb on stuff. It actually feels a lot better than I kind of anticipated. It's a role-playing game with a little bit more flair and quick flow, which I genuinely thought was kind of impressive. And then you can have this switch between these, like, abilities that you have. Like, you have a 2-combo switch. So, where's my cool axe? Yes, the Limb Taker. So, like, I was switching between basically using this wand and this spear and shield combo, but you can have any sort of combo you want, really. So you can have, there's quite a few different guns and weapons in this game. So I've got, you know, this cool blood dripping axe, which is freaking sweet, and then I've got the spear combo, and you can kind of switch between them. And then I can set up things. I can have, like, a gun. There's, like, sort of long rifles or muskets, and then there are other weapons that are kind of along those lines. And you get wands, and there's, like, books, and there's different swords, 1-hand, 2-hand. Then there's, like, tridents and spears. There's just a lot of different weapons, whether you're doing, you know, something that's a little bit more traditional as a weapon, or if you are trying to, like, switch it up and be a little bit more magical. The game has a mix, as to say, of weapons that you can use, and you can unleash some cool, like, ability attacks and stuff like that, where you, like, decimate your enemies, and it's quite stylistic, honestly. The game also has a bit of an odd sort of level caps set up. So basically, not as in like a level cap, but like weapons. So everything is tiered. So to be able to do damage in a new area, you have to have like a weapon. So as soon as you magically have a weapon that is of the tier or armor of the tier, all of a sudden you're able to do proper damage. Which creates a weird situation where when you're fighting guys, and all of a sudden you don't have the damage of your weapon tier, all of a sudden you can't do any damage. So you're like having to go and, I guess, grind and or collect stuff in order to become powerful enough to be able to take on an enemy. Powerful enough as in you just happen to have a better weapon gear. Which I thought was like a bit of a weird way to do sort of leveling and stuff, but I guess it's just different from having a cap, as to say. That would be a thing in the past, right? Where you just have like level caps in different zones. It's more of a traditional role-playing thing. So that's kind of a unique way to tackle, I guess, the leveling. And I just wanted to mention that, because at times it was a little weird how randomly it's like, oh yeah, now you're not good enough to do this. And you're like, oh, that's a bit strange. And that's just kind of the setup of it. It's definitely quite interesting. I'm trying to think of an area to go that's not gonna like spoil things. I guess we'll just use this one again, not Aedyr for Series X. But yeah, it's got an interesting narrative. You're an envoy. You're sent in on behalf of the Emperor to see what's going on. There's a dream scourge going on where people are becoming like mutated and kind of grotesque, but they kind of look like you because you're godlike. And you personalize your character, and you go in on this adventure making some level of choices. This game definitely lacked the sort of depth of choice that was present in, say, the Outer Worlds. Like I said, charisma, persuasion, stuff like that's kind of not at all in this, which is disappointing because I like to sweet talk my way through things in role-playing games. I like to role-play, as to say. That really isn't present here at all. You do have some interesting companions. I would say Kai there is really, really quite cool. He's sort of the first guy you get, and he's definitely the one I recommend keeping with you the whole time. Definitely some interesting companions, and then they have levels, and then there's different skill branches you can kind of work through. So you could be like, okay, I'm like a swords person, or I'm more of a mage, and those are your skill trees that you kind of build up as you like level. And then there's fun perks, so I've got a perk where, like on this particular character, I've got a perk where if I go and smash, say, a box, I actually gain health from destroying said box, which is kind of a cool gameplay mechanic that exists. It's sort of like a fun little thing. So it's got like some of the humor and the style of Obsidian games, for sure, but it is something that is relatively serious, gets the job done. The sort of thing, though, is it does, again, feel kind of shallow to some degree. Like, it's not, like, necessarily a totally, like, lively world. Like, there's lots of secrets. There's lots of things to find. There's lots of stuff to discover. You get to go on some cool, memorable journeys. But you're sort of also, like, restricted to a degree because it is just, you kill these enemies in this area and then you're kind of done. And, you know, you move from, like, section to section. Eventually, theoretically, you could just wipe out the world, as to say, and it would just kind of be, like, empty after a while. So it feels like a toned-back role-playing game from, you know, like the earlier, like, 360 era, which isn't a bad thing. Like, it's fun, it's enjoyable, it's got a decent amount of gameplay length to it, a lot of chatter, a lot of discussion, a lot of narrative, really cool enemies. Like, I love the skeletons, just look fantastic in this game. They are gnarly. The enemies have, like, certain kind of tier things to them. Like, there's ones that do, like, healing and stuff, and they work in coordination with the other skeletons, and yeah, there's some really great elements of gameplay in this in terms of like characters, exploration, discovery. You get all these different creatures and they're colorful, and it's like very, you know, kind of neat saturated colors. Like I love the aesthetic of this game. I think it's quite vibin'. Here on the Series S, even it kind of retains the style pretty well, which is nice. I was definitely, you know, it's not really crazy current gen stuff, but you know, I would say it's as far as like a UE5 game and stuff, it actually gives you a decent enough look, vibe, and aesthetic where you don't feel like you're totally missing out on the larger scale sense of everything. But yeah, it's sort of these hub worlds. So it's open world, as to say. But it's not like kind of like a wholly open world game. Like you go from section to section, and every area you spend X amount of time doing X amount of quests, and then you move on to the next one, and that's kind of the gameplay design here. They do respect your time really well, though, which I appreciate. You go through like a bit of a dungeon, quote unquote, but there's not really dungeons, but you go through an area, and then when you're finished with it, it's like, okay, now you can fast travel back to the start of this place. So it's like that, and then there's these camps where you go and you sort of meet and talk with your crew, and then you're given the option to be like, okay, do you want to leave where this camp is, or do you want to leave from the position you were at? So you can kind of use these camps as like fast travel points to set up your gear, enhance your gear, level your gear, and then go back to what you were doing. And that's where I was saying it's very respectful of my time and how I play the game. So it's decently lengthy. Like, there's a good amount of length to this, but it's not like endless, and it's not, I don't know if it's necessarily replay friendly in the sense that like things don't really change a whole lot. Like, it's not like the Outer Worlds where I kind of felt like there was definitive choices that really changed stuff up. Like, you make a few choices, but your stuff is limited, as to say. I also like that you can command your troops. So, like, to a light degree, you can be like, okay, you use this ability here, you heal us, and then you have, like, godlike abilities, so I can, like, shoot things out of my hands or heal stuff, and those are kind of fun, and you gain those based on, like, choices you make in the game, in regards to certain godlike things that you're trying to, like, discover. It's not the most, like, clever of plots or narratives. It's not, like, crazy mystery. Like, it's kind of a little bit predictable, I would say. But it gets the job done. It's a serviceable experience. I think you can have fun with it. And, yeah, Avowed is pretty cool. I liked it. I think you'll have a decent time with it. And you'll find some cool surprises along the way, some little side quests, some little hidden things that you can dive into and explore. And, there's a certain level of, like, magic to the colorfulness of it. Like, it feels like a very vibrant and exciting world of mystery. Like, you're basically going to, like, this colony. The second time kind of going through a bit of it here, I was actually like, oh my god, it's just like Australia. which is kind of funny, because it's like a place, like a colony of, like, outlaws and people that wanted to get away, and I was like, oh yeah, no, that's basically, well, I don't know, wanting to get away, but it's basically Australia in a sense, which I kind of got a bit of a chuckle out of, if you think about it from a certain point of view. But yeah, it's these untamed wilds, and you're doing stuff, and then there's, like, other people from the Empire that are kind of doing stuff, and then there's the people that, like, live here that are trying to control stuff, and then there's the fauna causing problems, and there's, like, a history of conflicts and wars and hidden surprises. Like, there's a lot of stuff in this game, a lot to see, a lot to do, but it's not overwhelmingly ridiculously long, so you can kind of get through it and move on, and that's kind of nice. This is something that's, like, good for amount of time, doesn't overstay its welcome, and is enjoyable. It's just, again, I would kind of say from a certain point of view that, like, it feels shallow as a role-playing game, just in terms of not having the charisma, the persuasion, the romantic elements, the just, like, modern things, like things I consider pretty modern for role-playing games, and it feels like a bit of a step back in some areas in comparison to the Outer Worlds, which is a game I really, really liked from Obsidian. Where, again, this game is basically the exact same sort of feel, vibe, and style, just without guns and space. It's fantasy. And they're pretty extensive lore universe. Like, they have, like, the Pillars of Eternity is, like, a pretty deep kind of franchise, if you're not familiar with it. Videos of that on the channel, too, just saying. But, yeah, I like the vibe of this game. I think it's something that's worth checking out and playing. There's just some stuff I wish was a little bit more detailed. But other than that, I think if you know what you're getting out of this, and this is the sort of thing you've been looking for, I think you'll find your value out of diving in and enjoying the world of Avowed like I did. And I'm glad to finally showcase it on Series S, and yeah, just again, apologies I wasn't able to get to it sooner. It's just it just kept reinstalling. I don't know what the Series S's problem is. There's always something, you know what I'm saying? There's always some kind of issue here.